Carlos, when did you first decide that you wanted to be involved in the helping other people succeed business?
I'd probably say like when I was maybe 19 years old, I had left to go to Tallahassee to pursue my college degree. And instead, what ended up happening is I started a band. I only stayed there for 6 months. There was a family thing that I needed to go back home. And when I did, I started working at an electronic sales company again. And I was sort of lost, didn't know what I wanted. I was undecided in college. I remember going back into working into Best Buy electronics company. Again, a new person came in and told me, hey, how do I find this item? Right. And I got super excited that someone needed my help to do something. So I went to the system and I showed them how to log in and how to find it. And I just started like teaching them other things. Like that was a moment for me where I said, this is what I want to do. I want to help others. Like it just gave me so much fulfillment. Seeing someone that was new going from confused to unsure, the first day to now it's like, I have an ally. I have someone that can help me. I have someone send me the way and creating a path for me. And since then I had full clarity on like, I love teaching, training, supporting people, and going from a place where I don't know where I'm doing to a place where like, okay, there's a roadmap here.
Mm-hmm. And you train professional services on how to be more confident, more competent when it comes to often commercially focused decision making, right? So sales environments, growth environments, collaborative environments where they can be asking for more. How did you choose to work within the sector of professional services?
Well, my path started in retail sales, and much like your journey, Phil, like when you were like washing cars as a kid, so did I. Like my first business was washing cars as a kid. Actually, I don't even remember the candy called Pixie Sticks, the little sugar things that you like rip off and it's just sugar, but in color. Back in middle school, I had a little Pixie Sticks like business going on. And so I just loved making money. I loved money, always loved money. Really good at budgeting, learned a lot about finance through my family. We're a big financial family. My brother's an accountant, as you know, Hector. My dad was in trading. He ran businesses, a lot of entrepreneurs. So finance and money has always been sort of very natural to me. So I naturally went from retail sales into banking and then from banking into accounting just because it's been common and in my environment a lot. So professional services and professional career has always been around me. And so it's always intrigued me going from a place of having a lot of technical knowledge and seeing the gap of technical knowledge is only going to get you so far. Mm-hmm. The soft skills and communication skills and being able to persuade and have a conversation with another human and understanding, helping them be seen and be heard and making those connections. I felt like that was a fun game, as a fun puzzle to solve. Mm-hmm. And I found myself naturally being able to do that, to help someone feel like I can feel what they feel and help them get to a place of clarity.
Okay. So thinking about accountants and lawyers and bankers, most of these folks don't see themselves as salespeople. Why do you think that is?
I think the media has conditioned us to put them in a box and label them as, these are some cultural, behavioral things that salespeople do, that they're tactics that they use, and there are, things that they're doing to people rather than doing it in service of them, mm-hmm. in support of that. And so having to change that perspective has been like a big mission. The other piece is that a lot of the identity of the professional and their pride and what makes them feel valuable is them having the title of being the lawyer, the title of being the accountant, the fact that they served 10 years, 5 years to school to know all this technical knowledge. They feel like talking about sales kind of cheapens that prestigious, investment in that career. And so the association to that, it almost feels like it declines their self-worth of that title itself.
What challenges do you see show up in the real world, particularly in the modern world, for professionals that have that level of prestige? Like what self-sabotage do you see to their own help, their own growth, their own success as a result of that belief?
Well, I think like all entrepreneurs, and I've gone through it myself, is we start thinking a lot about like doubting is like, am I worth that? And could I ever charge as much as this other person who is a later chapter of their career, of that expertise? Or so the comparison trap is one of the biggest things. It's like everyone's doing it this way. I can never be like that. So there's a little bit of that mindset trap. I think some of it is I don't want to feel or seem like I'm being pushy.
Yeah.
So they sort of get nervous when it
Right.
comes to talking about pricing, and the whole pricing psychology kicks in. And so I think some of those traps, they realize that you go to school to learn all these technical skills and you forget that you have to have strong business communication skills to be able to articulate your value, the value of your services, what outcome it gives the end user. And it gets messy when it goes into those conversations. So they struggle a lot with the mindset, with their ability to articulate their value, and understanding that communication is a huge part of it.
So knowing that lots of people listening into our conversation right now are in the helping business in some way, and you love to help helpers help at a greater level, and whether you're running a coaching business or an advisory business, or you're an accountant, a lawyer, an attorney, or anywhere in between, like, how should somebody that is in the business of selling something that is largely intangible, like it's not a product on a shelf, how should they think about pricing? And then how should they think about articulating their value around that price?
A lot of things that I've learned in the world of selling expertise is that shift your mindset from selling your inputs or outputs, focus more on outcomes.
Okay.
Right. So if we're going to be able to help someone achieve a specific outcome, whether it's peace of mind, save money, make money, how much is that worth to that person? And one of the things that you've said, Phil, and many thought leaders in the space of pricing talk about is that the price will be a fraction of the value that's created. So if we can enter into a conversation knowing that my value will always exceed the investment that the person I'm serving, then we're doing a fine job here, and there's fairness in the transaction. It's not a transaction, it's actually a relationship, and it's in service to helping that person achieve that outcome.
And I think that makes sense, providing you can get yourself to that conversation, that you can be involved in a value exchange. You can run a discovery conversation to find out what's truly valuable to people. Yet many of these services are becoming commoditized. People are researching online ahead of time. People are asking the how much question ahead of time. People are feeling like everybody is a version of the same. They all do the same thing. So how do you help people navigate that space so that they can get paid what they're worth?
I was recently reading an amazing book by Blair Ants. It's called The Four Conversations. And he says this really awesome quote, which is, the conversation is the sample of the sale. When you're selling expertise, everything you do in that conversation, the way you frame questions, the way you prepare for the conversation, already gives that potential buyer an impression of what they're looking to expect if they were to hire you. So if you don't come prepared knowing what questions to ask, knowing the depth of what kind of problems, and being genuinely curious about the problem of the potential customer, then there's a challenge. The other thing I feel like a lot of professionals fall into a trap, and it comes back to some of the concepts that you teach, is that they forget to stay curious. When someone's been providing professional services for over 10, 15, 20 years, it's almost like, I know exactly what they need. They have messy books, if it's an accountant, and they probably try to have their cousin do their QuickBooks. And so they come into these assumption traps where they don't treat that first conversation as genuine curiosity.
Yeah.
So they put them in a box as what they need. Where instead, if they stayed curious a little longer and understand what happened to their old accountant, then why did they choose their cousin and not wanting to get an accountant, and get really deep into understanding their reasons and their why, then they actually sell themselves short on what value potential they can create for the other person. So I think some of it is when professionals get stuck on doing the same thing over and over, it's comfortable. So doing something different is challenging. Asking deeper questions feels like invasive. If I were to ask you something like, why did you choose, the current accountant that you have? And have you ever thought about, what do you value the most out of X, Y, and Z? Sometimes to ask that question, which is new and different, which is a value-based question rather than a fact-finding question, the person asking the question who hasn't done it before feels really uncomfortable and awkward and unconfident because they haven't done it before. So I try to help people kind of navigate through, hey, just try these small, new, different types of conversation types, because the conversation is the sample of the sale, of the engagement. And you have to show up that you have the expertise and knowledge, because that's what you're selling, is expertise.
Right. Okay. You're selling expertise. You have to show that ahead of time. How did you get to learn all of this, right? You're the guy that was selling sugar sticks at school. How do you get to be where you are now, that you're advising professional services, people that have acquired credentials through going to school, putting time, effort, and energy into it, getting licensed, being seen as a standard bearer in almost every circumstance, is something to do with significant sums of money. How do you get to be the person that is guiding and leading individuals in that environment?
How much time do you have?
Let's go.
So I think where the real like tides were turned were when I was feeling like an imposter at the bank, 20 years old, as a banker in a branch, trying to give retirement advice to someone who was twice my age. And I needed to find creative ways to be able to borrow confidence from elsewhere. So I just started staying creative and curious with myself, because a lot of imposter syndrome came in at that moment. So I started thinking and observing at different things. Like one of those things where I started seeing a lot of people in the older age coming into the bank, not having planned for retirement, and seeing the consequences of their life because of it. So I could use that as third-party story to be able to help those who are at a fairly early age to be able to retire without them saying, who are you, 20-year-old kid, telling me how to retire when I can't? So I tried to find creative ways to do that. So I think I put myself in a lot of uncomfortable positions to be able to overcome a lot of obstacles in sales circumstances where I'm making recommendations and I need to find different paths. And I always treated it like a game, like, how can I solve this issue? And I never stopped asking questions. I stayed curious. And why do I need to ask that question? And why do I need to ask that question? And why do I need to ask that question? And I'm sorry, boss. Sorry, I keep asking, but why do I need to know the source of income in order to be able to qualify someone for a loan? And like me being able to stay curious and ask why, like a 5-year-old kid would, it helped me just build my confidence in doing that. After doing that enough times, I felt like I was good enough not only to perform, but also I was mentoring and supporting others, because that's the thing that really fulfilled me. And then I was put in a position where I was a consultant, which meant that I was training and onboarding a lot of the newer bankers in how to navigate conversations, especially when it comes to negotiation, to be able to build rapport, to be able to make recommendations, stay curious. And then at one point, my career just kind of stalled. And I felt like my creativity was being kind of held back and there were no more opportunities. So I decided to go into entrepreneurship myself. I had a huge conversation with Hector, who's my brother, with my mentor. And I said, I'm done with the bank. I want to go on my own. He goes, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I don't know. So then I sat in my couch and I grabbed my notes in my Apple and I asked myself, what are my skills? And I took inventory of all my skills. Well, I love training. I love coaching. I love speaking. I love doing. And after doing it, I realized sales and training. And so I go back to Hector and I said, well, I want to do sales and training. He goes, well, okay, well, what are you going to sell? What product are you going to sell? I was like, I don't know. Let me get back to you. So I told him, how about a training workshop? And it's going to be called this and that. And I came up with the business name and I came up with the logo. And then he's like, okay, build a PowerPoint and see if we can sell it. So while I'm working at the bank, I'm already thinking about this new business venture. So I'm going through the journey of what it is to build and design your own product, your own brand and everything. But I had someone along the way guide me through every steps to help me kind of scaffold my way into whatever that definition is. Long story short, I built my first PowerPoint. I was so proud. I shared it with him and he said to me, I think this is something you can sell. Who can you sell it to? And I was like, let me get back to you. So I go home that weekend. I share it with my dad and my mom. And it's like, hey, this presentation, I'm thinking about starting my own business. And my dad's selling insurance at that point. And my mom's kind of cooking on the side and going like, oh, yeah, listening skills, your dad needs that. And my dad's like, Mercedes, don't get involved in this. Carlitos is showing me this. And like, so we're having all this conversation. And my dad's like, this is really good. I think I know someone that I could tell. And so he reaches out to the person and 5 minutes later, he's like, she's interested. Call her on Monday. And I go to Hector. Hey, I got a first opportunity. I got a lead. All of this is happening while I'm in corporate. So I'm going through this journey of transitioning, going from corporate to entrepreneurship. And I called the lady and I do the discovery call as I've been trained to do naturally. I needed a proposal and he's like, we need a website. We built a website that evening. My brother and I, it was like 2 hours long. And we built a proposal with a company logo head and we sent the proposal. A week goes by, silence.
Of course. Yeah.
My dad calls me 2 days later. Did you hear anything from her? Nope. 4 days later, my brother, did you hear anything from her? Nope. And then finally she shows up. She's like, we're ready. Let's do this thing. So I sold my first training. But one thing was that when Hector said, what are you thinking about charging her? In my head, I had a number. And then I knew that he was going to say that's too low. So then I came up with a second number. And then after I said the second number, he said, that's too low. I was like, God damn. I said, 700. My first instinct was 500. I said 700 to say like, I'm going to say something higher. He goes, charge her 2,500. With all this confidence, I was like, how the hell? Because in my head, I'm only running 2 trainings. So it's 1 hour, 2 hours. I was thinking inputs, not outcomes.
Okay.
And it was 20 people, 20 insurance salespeople. What would be the outcome as a result of me sharing all this knowledge to them? the outcome is like how many insurance deals do they need to close thanks to these executing these skills, and how much value will it create? I couldn't think that way. So I think me having gone through that mindset shift myself, it was just such an eye-opening experience. And I said, wow, just imagine if I could help others kind of see the light in that sense. And that was my inspiration and my mission to say, if I could unlock my own value, I mean, how many other people can I help achieve that same outcome?
That's huge.
Where everybody's winning too.
And I love that scenario there where you say, well, you went from 500, you felt the peer pressure to say go 500 to 700, and then you borrowed the confidence to be able to ask for a number that was 3.5 times what you already thought was a big number. And one thing that I've learned in getting to know you better is the value you place on mentorship, the value you put in borrowing wisdom from people who've stepped before you. And you're very proactive, at least from my point of view, looking at it externally, is to say, how do I find mentors that can help me run further and faster? Is that a conscious decision, or is that something that's just in your DNA?
I think you and I share a similar philosophy when you say, I don't say wow, I say how.
Right.
I think it was a borrowed behavior that I have already observed. Again, I'm going to go back to, I have a big family, but I have a lot of inspiration, and I give a lot of credit to the things that I learned from people I admire. But when we were kids, Hector and I, we would go anywhere. We go to a Marlins game in Florida, Marlins game, and we're in the middle of the bathroom. There's a janitor. My dad will be like, hey, where are you from? What's your name? And this and that. And being able to see my dad talk to strangers so easily, these were just, obviously as a kid, I'm just like, Dad, let's go home. I'm bored, whatever. But like being able to see that, and later on, seeing how he's so curious to approach people and being curious about things, I think it gave me this unconscious permission to be able to just ask.
Right.
I've just always had a lot of, fortunately, I've had a lot of people that have always been generous with wanting to help me succeed, just because I've always just been asking why. And I never stop asking why. And I think mentors feel good about themselves too, to be able to help lift others, because at one point they felt like they were that person. So maybe in a good way, I resemble some of that to some people, like this good intent, this good heart, I want to do well, I want to make an impact, and I've been able to attract mentors. But I think you've mentioned something like you don't have to pick one person. You can learn wisdom from different people, and you can also learn wisdom from the mistakes that people make. And there are existing mentors that I have and former mentors that I have that have made certain choices that I would never do. So I've chosen not to take that wisdom from them, or I've seen a mistake that they've made. And so I just feel like I've always been very, introspective.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm always thinking about I'm not perfect, but there are a lot of, there's evidence of other people that can show you what good looks like. And I'd like to follow those models, and I'm not afraid to ask. And I'm not afraid to be vulnerable and like put my ego aside just to say, I don't know this and somebody else does. And can I learn from them? So I don't know.
Often looking for advice, often looking for the opinions of others, but you seem to be very selective on who you ask from. And what advice would you give people for both choosing the mentors they might be looking for to help them get to where they want to go next, and then approaching those mentors in a way so they get the insights that they're looking for?
I would say, are your values in alignment? For example, my biggest value is generosity, like no quid pro quo, like not this for that.
Yeah, that's trading.
Are you willing to invest for some of that? There's this idea that was taught to me, is called follow your dollar. Like spend some money on them first, spend some time, spend attention, give them something first before you can ask for something in return.
Okay.
And not because you trying to get something in return, do it because you're honoring and you're really showing that you genuinely care. And if they don't give something in return after you've invested into it, then that's another signal to know, like, is this a mentor who I want? If I'm honoring them, if I'm selling their work, I'm buying their work, and they're not willing to at least give me an opportunity to see, hey, could we have a partnership? Okay. But I think values is huge. That would be my first and only thing. Is that
so values? You lean in first, do something with effort, attention, money that is a give before there is an ask back.
Ethics. That would be my other aspect. Is like our ethics also in alignment. I think great mentors are generous. I think great mentors are also role models in the way they behave, because And they're also willing to be vulnerable, to share mistakes that they've made and what they've learned from it. You don't want a mentor who's going to give you a facade of only these are all the good things about everything I've done. And so someone who's very self-aware and willing to be vulnerable and share some of their flaws I think is an attractive quality in a mentor as well, because it's like, oh, they're human too, which makes me easier to connect with that person.
But how do you ask for mentorship? Like, I understand that you can buy somebody's program, you can be a client of somebody's wisdom or advice or guidance. Mentorship's more than that. How do you signal or actually identify to somebody like, I'm looking for mentorship from you? Because we could ask 1,000 people whether they'd like a mentor, and they'd say I'd like one, and they could choose who they'd want them to be. They could be in alignment with values and ethics, but be like, how do I get the gift of mentorship back? What's the approach? What's the conversation? What should we be asking?
I think it starts with doing a gap analysis on yourself, and then what are the things that they have that you don't?
Okay.
And then being able to make that list and come up with those reasons. And then obviously in a mentorship relationship, which I've had the opportunity in my previous roles to run mentorship programs and help people find mentors and mentees and do matching. I think part of it is the mentee needs to be the one that drives whatever that looks like. And you've got to make it easy for the mentor for the mentee to be mentored, right? So, the mentee needs to be flexible with time. The mentee would be the one running what the calls would look like. And the mentee would be the one that would be thinking about the cadence of how often they would connect. So the mentee is the one getting all the benefits. They should be the one driving their own development.
Right.
And they should also show the mentor the initiative of saying, how easy can I make it for you so that this relationship could work?
Yeah. So this is travel to them, find it on their terms, look to be able to meet them at a point in time in their life with a communication platform that is something that is right for them. Don't ask for too much in too big of a challenge. And
not just saying, Phil, can you be my mentor? And then not know what happens next after it. It's, hey, Phil, I'd love to propose an idea. And here's the reason why is, you have a certain level of skills that I am aspiring to get. Like I would love to be in a public speaking stage and I have a couple of ideas of how we could do that. I can make it easy for you. Do you have a few speaking engagements coming in the future where I could just pay for my own ticket, show up and maybe observe you from a point of view of an audience member, but like seeing things that you're doing? And then could you spend 15 minutes after that just telling me what I saw? And you're just like, dude, like, sure. Like I don't have to do much. All I have to do is just give you my wisdom.
Yeah.
Like if someone takes that initiative, would you be more 100%. Motivated to say yes to something?
100%.
Like, but if I just say, Phil, can I be your mentee? You're like,
oh, how? Like how? You don't even know you can deliver upon that. Is what people are asking for is too big of a gap. So what do you definitely not ask? Let's just jam that between us for a second. If you see somebody, the ethics align, the values you align, you're like, you got what I need. Like, what should you not ask of someone that could actually sabotage your chances of getting mentorship?
I think the wrong format, the wrong moment, if the ask is too big, if there hasn't been any goodwill established between it. So I would say don't do it in the first interaction.
Right.
Again, think about what is it that you're looking for. Like if you're not clear, like don't do it. If you're not clear on what exactly you need. And make sure you have the credibility to be able to at least be seen by the other person with a perception of that you have the pegs on the board, that you have the credibility, that there are steps that you've taken in a path. And so like if I just graduated college and I see Tony Robbins video and it's like I'm so far from where I could be from Tony Robbins, this is not the right time. So I think picking the right time when you think you could be ready for. And you're like, it's almost like a qualifier, like when someone's like filling out a form and you're either going to be approved or not approved. Like you have to have a certain credit score.
Yeah.
So it's like, what's your score of like, do you have enough credibility to get to a place where this is going to be the next natural step?
Sometimes choosing a mentor who is a few steps ahead of you in the race, not 1,000 paces ahead of you in a race. And I think of it sometimes is that if you're thinking about potentially getting started in the game of golf, Tiger Woods probably isn't your best mentor.
That's right.
There's probably somebody who's in a different position that could mentor you at a higher level where the value exchange is going to be better on both parts. And I'm on a mission to stop people picking people's brains. Like, I think that's one of the worst things that somebody can ask for, or a direct ask like, I would like you to be my mentor. Will you be my mentor? Like, that's like a freaky, scary question. And even questions like, can I be an intern? Can I Like, these are dangerous questions because you're showing that you don't even understand what help looks like, but you're asking for help.
Yeah.
I've seen you do something on repeat that is very impressive, and I think has been a huge catalyst to your career growth. And it's your ability to collaborate with other people. It's to create ways where 2 plus 2 adds up to more than 4. 2 plus 2 adds up to more than 4. I see you do it with Hector and what you've created through Reframe. I see you do it with me. I see you do it with other content collaborators that are, on the face of it, significantly bigger platforms than what you are. And like mutual friend Christo is a great example of that. Is that intentional? Are you doing that on purpose? Is that something that you are choosing to be able to do?
One thing you know about me is I'm a musician, and having played in bands is sometimes, in order for a band to sound really great, is that all the instruments need to be in alignment, on tempo, and complementary and in harmony.
Right.
And when I think about collaboration, I think about if we were a band, how can we be in harmony?
Yeah.
And sometimes that means, letting go of the ego. And oftentimes when we go in collaboration, a lot of people think about it's like, how can I make it the Carlos show? Or if it was the other person's, I could make it my show. And it's like, instead, I always look at it as how could we make it our show? And then we both be able to showcase our brilliance together. But the impact is twice as powerful because we get to complement on each other's complementary sets of skills, but be in alignment with the audience and the message and the intended outcome. I think there's got to be a level of generosity, of vulnerability, of no ego. Let's serve the moment, alignment. And I also am picky who I collaborate with, because I can tell who has an agenda, just like our modern buyers these days. They know when you have an agenda if you're going to sell something.
Right.
And I think when people use the word collaborate, oftentimes there could be an agenda tied behind it. And so it's being selective. But how did I come about with doing that? I think, my musical background and jamming so much and working on a lot of group projects have given me this natural ability to always be like, I just want to let everyone do what they want to do, say what they want to say. I'm typically the last person to talk in a conversation. You've probably noticed that when we're talking, I let everyone does, just reading the room. I'm feeling it out. And music sometimes does feel like that too. Like I'm feeling out where everybody's at. And I just read the moment. And when I feel like I can take the lead, I can. I've earned the right because I've given everyone space to feel comfortable and safe to do that. But sometimes collaboration doesn't work the way you want it to. And you got to have critical conversations about, if a person's not pulling their weight or if they're doing it for different motives. And sometimes you learn from those things as well. And having the courage to be able to also just kind of say, hey, this is not going to work out, or I don't have capacity, or, it's not giving us the outcomes that we originally agreed to. So it is a tricky, but if done really well, the goal is to elevate everyone's brand and drive the impact where the intended person or the audience or who we want to help is receiving the benefit of that collaboration.
How does your knowledge and wisdom around collaboration show up in the way that you support your corporate clients?
Well, as I think about having to navigate the world of corporate, they have agendas, they have priorities, and leaders want to know that the team is in alignment with whatever corporate priorities are. So what I try to always do is embed whatever directives are of the company and then be able to blend in my knowledge, wisdom into that language, into that message, so that leadership and those that are in those partnerships and relationships, they're seeing a true synergy of that. I think often outside vendors that are coming in are just, again, going with their own agenda, saying, I know best, right? I know what your company needs. These are all the problems that are broken. Instead, just stay curious and understand and kind of be able to blend in the messages and where there's aligned purpose and common ground on how we can execute and help the end audience get what they need. One thing that I've learned in my corporate background is from a really, really wise coach of me is he always asks me this question is, what are you looking to accomplish out of this coaching conversation? Or what are you looking to accomplish? And it's like, well, I am going to help this person understand all the opportunities that are being missed in the conversations that they're having. And he asked me the one question is, what do they need from you out of this conversation? Not what do they want to hear from you, not what fancy knowledge you have about how to ask questions, not the 5 steps to handling objections, is what do they need from you? And I think often that's the question that's always resonated with me. It's like, what does this podcast need at this moment?
Right.
What does my conversation with my next critical, difficult conversation, what does it need? Who do I need to be for that person to serve the moment, to serve the outcome? So when I think about collaboration, I think about, what does this collaboration need for it to be successful? Not, can I show up and just be a people pleaser and do everything that they want me to do? Is, what does it need? And if sometimes it needs for me to be clear on my expectations, then that's who I need to be. So I think if we can ask ourselves those questions more, I think we can be able to grab more courage because I think often in relationships, we're missing a lot of the courage because humans naturally are challenged with moments of conflict, right? So what they do is they either stay quiet, or the worst time to think about the thing you're going to say is in the moment you're going to say it. They say something really unfiltered and then they feel remorse because of it, or it damages the relationship.
And I believe what I'm hearing here as well is that when you are truly collaborative with your clients, is you can give them what they need whilst they're asking for what they want.
Yeah.
And you can serve both those agendas at the same time and have the ability to be able to position towards it. And I think what you're articulating here is it's when you get close enough to understand that there is a common victory that isn't you versus them, it's you and them versus something that's bigger. And in all of your articulation here around collaboration, you're saying that we are on the quest to achieve something that's bigger than both of us. We are trying to achieve something that neither of us could have achieved by ourselves. And that's what makes it really unique. And I think that's one of your unique superpowers, is that you're always looking to help people where there is a winner, and another winner, not losers that are being created from this. And it's a very admirable approach to sales, business growth, and negotiation. And I think it's refreshing. I'm grateful. Thank you.
No, thank you. And as I think about collaboration, I'm grateful with the environment that I've grown up in. And we're in a big family. And I'll just share a really quick story. It's exposure therapy over here. Is a lot of people I get to observe that say that they fear, speaking in public, or they struggle when they put on the spot. And so I purposely put myself in situations to try to overcome some of those fears as well. But when I was a kid and I was playing the guitar, we'd have a lot of get-togethers at home. And again, I'm thankful for my dad just being his beautiful self. And we'd have 20, 30 people and say, hey, Carlitos, you have a new song. Hey, why don't you bring your guitar and play it for everybody? And I'd never done that before. And it was kind of scary, but it was a safe environment where I could do it, where I know I'm loved and I'm accepted, whether I do that. So as I think about people that want to do uncomfortable and difficult things, is could you find places where you're feeling safe to do it? But modeling the behaviors of inclusiveness, of doing things together, I think that naturally has given me the courage to be able to look for collaboration, to be able to reach out to others and feel safe. And if I don't feel safe or they don't feel safe, I can create that safe environment because I've observed what someone creating a safe environment for me has. So, and in Reframe, that's something that we've done as well, is we build such a collaborative environment, mostly because we help people feel safe. We help people feel like they're part of a family. And so at any time, people can feel safe to be able to share.
I've seen you do this at an event experience where you got 250 accountants to dance on the dance floor, most of which didn't have really any alcohol inside them whatsoever. And they were quite happy to be, very free, very full-spirited, very much aware of themselves. And then we learn about Carlos as the musician as well. And I'm keen to understand, what have you learned from the world of music that helps you in business? And in particular, what exists in that art form of being a singer and a songwriter, but also a business person that supports accountants and professional services? Like, where's that art and that science coming across? And how does the artistry of music help you and others be better in the world of business?
I think you could agree that you are a different person when you're in a concert. You're a different person when you're in a car listening to a song. You're a different person when you are being moved by some sort of art form, or where you feel free, free to be you, free to feel the way you feel, and your body somewhat subconsciously just feels like they're flowing with it. So I've always had that, because I have that gift of, that's been given to me to be exposed to so much music. I kind of try to bring that to life in a place where there are boundaries and there are these borders and there are these rules and there are these boxes and there are these labels that we're supposed to be acting a certain way. Because I'm an accountant, I'm supposed to be acting this way because that's the way society has shaped or labeled what that profession is. Or if I'm a lawyer or if I'm a real estate agent, I'm
very like structured box,
stuck in a box. But when you're listening to music, you're not in a box. You know, you're free to dance and move however you want. And you know, some people are more courageous than others to just not like Elaine from Seinfeld, you know, if you know that reference, kind of dance however you want. But there's more freedom in music. You know, there's freedom to flow, where I think some of these social constructs and that have been built in the professional environments sort of limited our ability. And I think going outside of that feels wrong. And so that's why I think there's hesitancy and anxiety to do something that's daring or risky or different, because maybe it doesn't feel natural. But in music, it does.
One thing I've always believed in what we do, exactly what to say, is to know that the message can reach lots of different audiences. But to reach those different audiences, sometimes it needs a different messenger. We've had the book now translated into almost 30 different languages, most of which I have zero ability to be able to even comprehend a sentence, let alone be able to speak or articulate. Yet still, I get so much joy of knowing the principles outside my body of work have shown up into different cultures. Like that's a really admirable, joyful thing. You've helped take that one stage further inside our world at Exactly What to Say, and actually taught classes in Spanish, ran communities in Spanish, helped translate not just the book work, but actually the methodology into training capacity in Spanish. Is what have you learned from doing that? What can I learn from your experience from that? What can people who are familiar with even Exactly What to Say methodology learn from your experience of teaching this, leading classes in a language that is not the core language it was written in?
Yeah, so the one observation is that Exactly What to Say in Spanish is 4 times more useful. And I'll tell you exactly why that number. It's because there are 250,000 words in the Spanish language. So sometimes to be able to say something in Spanish in business communication, the sentences is longer. That's why a lot of people, when they see a lot of people speaking Spanish, they talk so much. It's because the sentence is longer because you have to use with what you got. You only have 250,000 words.
Okay.
So structuring sentences takes longer. Where you could say the cat sat on the car, that could take longer to be able to explain in Spanish.
So how do you say the cat sat in the car in Spanish? Come on.
El gato se sentó en el carro. But anyways, maybe that's not a good example. But even in a business conversation, it's tougher. So when I was able to see this and when I was able to introduce it to the Spanish community, they felt like, oh my God, this is so much easier for me to explain. And I think a lot of people, not only in professional services, but in a lot of services, they try to over-contextualize everything they do. And in a sales process in Spanish, it's like you have to talk and talk and talk and talk. But if you can shorten it, be more efficient, you know, be able to get to the point faster. So I think that's one point. The other point, when you think about helping professional service providers in a Spanish-speaking community that operates in an English-speaking world, and navigating a culture where things are done in business in English and in an American way versus the way that we did it in South America or Central America or in another Latin American country, helping them shift the mindset of how business works in the United States is also a journey. So I think the unique skills of me being able to live in both worlds and help someone come from, you know, where business was done in Latin America versus how business is done in US, but then also how can you level up your business communication so that you could also help your small business owners who are navigating through the same challenges feel good, feel clear, feel confident, feel equipped, feel empowered to achieve the American dream. So I think communication is a huge, huge component.
That's awesome. And I'm so grateful as well that I was perpetually surprised why the English version of Exactly What to Say would do so well in particularly Latin country environments. And I think what you've clarified to me here is it's because there are a number of people that are having to communicate in English regularly, yet that's not their first language or their second language or perhaps even their third language that they would reach to from a priority point of view. So Exactly What to Say almost becomes a lingua franca that can give them some confidence to be able to show up in largely English-speaking languages and not only get the words, but get the sentiment and the brevity behind it to be able to drive change.
And a quick unlock idea. One of the things that we had in our house when we first moved to the States is as we were learning English, it was a Spanish English dictionary. So it
Okay.
was a direct translation of one or the other. So just imagine if we had a Spanish English, combo, bilingual, exactly what to say. Because when I did my last certification, just a random feedback moment, a lot of my audience were bilingual, Hispanic primary speaking. And many of them, we threw the program in English. But English being their second language, they were like, my God, these words exactly in English, I just feel like I unlocked a different superpower to be able to articulate my value in English. Because a lot of Spanish speaking practitioners that are trying to gain business from English speaking customers, they feel lack of confidence in articulating their way because they have less words, because their English is their second language, and sometimes they feel more confident in their native language. So just also an insight that I got from teaching this from a bilingual speaking individual that hasn't mastered English, exactly what to say, super useful for them.
So if somebody is in professional services, they want to win more business, they want to charge more money, they want to be able to approach more of the new clients, they want to be able to reach a little higher and maybe change their book of business to something that's more rewarding. They want to be more creative, they want to have more artfulness in the work that they do. What exactly should they do? What steps should they take in order to be able to achieve more of what it is they want from their business?
Well, I think the first piece is if they have achieved that self-awareness, that's usually the first step, is take inventory, take a look at self in the mirror and understand where are you and where you want to be. So if you acknowledge that first, that's great. Second is, who do I know that is in a place that has a model of what I would aspire to? Is it someone that is a thought leader, or someone on YouTube? Or is it someone in my community? Is there a mastermind, or is there a network? Is there a resource? So I think have a reference of a model of what great looks like, of what that ideal future desired state looks like. And then what happens everything in between that, which is like, what's my plan to get there and who can help me get there? And I think joining a community, some sort of mastermind community, or a community with like-minded professionals in the same industry, where there's proven success of people they admire, they like, they know, and they trust, where they can see themselves, on that path, and they can be held accountable to do that. And then lastly is they got to be able to invest in that desired future state, which means that there's a financial investment required, but there's also a time investment required, and there's openness to be able to do things that are uncomfortable, and know that you have to disrupt yourself before you can kind of put yourself back together and get to that desired goal.
Love that. What role does software, automation, and artificial intelligence play in the future of professional services? Because if ChatGPT can pass the bar, and if people can get the answers to most of their tax questions via an online portal, and if people are working on SaaS and software solutions that can allow bookkeeping to be the most efficient it's ever been from a coding point of view, like how does technology interact with the professional services industry at large, and is it going to result in actually us having people in these roles in the future, or are these roles going to be redundant? What is Carlos Garcia forecasting in the intersection between people and technology and professional services?
What I know is that it's starting to happen more and more is that technical services, repetitive tasks and things that could be done on a technical basis, and a lot of professionals who pride themselves in being masterful at doing things that are repetitive and redundant, and things that can be easily done by AI models, which is something that's proven to happen. Take, for example, AI in bookkeeping or in tax. They have products out there that's called Tax GPT or Tax Copilot that can research all of the IRS code for you to help you now deliver better advice for clients who need to navigate challenging tax circumstances. Where it helps technical professionals like a tax advisor is you use that tool to elevate how you deliver advisory to your clients. But where there are services that technical services are going to be replaced or commoditized, professionals need to lean in more into the soft skills and the communication and their ability to humanize a lot of the things that an AI or technology or an automation software can't do. And I think you've talked about this before, how many people are feeling overwhelmed and sort of just like done with an automated direct message, or like immediately we get disgusted by it, right? Like I see 7 to 15, hey Carlos, love your content, so valuable, I made a 30-second clip for you, blah blah blah, blah. Like immediately it's like, get the heck out of
done.
here. What I prefer is a human person saying, hey dude, that was a cool reel, I just want to let you know you're cool, keep rocking. Like that I'm probably more willing to respond to than the typical scripted thing. So where things get more automated, I think people may get repelled by it. But if we help professional services experts leverage AI to elevate their brand and then how they personally look at solving problems, I think that would be the way we want to reframe, rather than looking at AI as a threat, more how can we look at it as an ally to help us elevate and distinguish and differentiate ourselves from others.
So what you're saying is like the tech-enabled humans may rise, and the humans that fail to embrace technology could find themselves redundant.
Absolutely. Or commoditized,
right?
Right? So it makes them less relevant. And when you're not different, then you're going to be competing for price.
Okay. If people were thinking about Carlos Garcia and his superpowers, and they were thinking like, well, why would you be the number one in the world at that one thing? What do you see yourself as being like better at than anybody else? Where is the sweetest spot in business growth where you're like, I got this more than anybody else?
I have a deep level of curiosity and wanting to understand someone's problem and being able to help them overcome and achieve that. I have a deep level of care of wanting to help someone get from where they are to where they want to get to. And I'm like a dog on a toy. Try to grab a toy from a dog, he's not going to let go of it. So I don't let go of things because I have a deep level of responsibility of wanting to help someone achieve transformation, because I know what it means when it has done for me, when others have done it for me. And I think those are the three things.
Okay. I see the upside in all three of those things. What's the downside?
Of course, if I can't be stretched too thin, too many things, too much commitment. But the good part of that is that I have plenty of resources and partners and other ways to help and give people options of how we can work together if it's not directly. But the downside is if I overcommit to too many things, then I obviously can't help everybody at all times.
So let's start to get to that before we wrap up with some final questions is how do you know what to say no to? Because it's easy to think like let's attract, let's convert. But everybody hits capacity at some point. How do you know what to say no to? And how do you say no to opportunities that are not a good fit?
I think the specialization is the thing that it's been really a hard journey for me to be able to accept, is that there are specific problems that I solve. And if it doesn't fit into that, I think that's my one of my filters. If it's outside of the problems that I solve, then I know that I need to have the courage to say no to, because I don't want to learn or be on a learning curve on the customer's dime. So if I say yes to something, but I'm learning how to solve their problem while they're paying me, it's not fair to the client. So that would be the first thing.
Okay. You don't want your work to be your rehearsal.
I made that mistake once.
Okay.
Won't do it again.
What happened?
It was a guy a small business owner who hired me to help them build a process for he made these like fitness cookies, like protein cookies. And he showed me the entire process and wanted me to help him do certain things. And I was pretending that I knew what I was doing, but as I was doing, I was figuring it out. And I think he kind of saw through that, and he stopped paying me at one point, and I was like, fair enough. So I kind of just left it, and I said,
resist and realize that was on you.
I won't say yes to that again, because it's not fair to them. It wasn't fair to me either, and it was a learning lesson.
So how do you say no to the opportunities that don't fit without just being like, no?
First thing is, do I have capacity? If I don't, I just say I don't have capacity.
Okay.
Second, does it fit within my business model? If it doesn't, then I just say, unfortunately, it doesn't fit within my business model. And third, is there a fit? Is there a personality fit? If they have a certain level of ethics, expectations that are unreasonable, that are outside of my ethical compass, and all these things, I just usually say, unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be a fit, or it's not going to work, or I typically just give a ridiculous price, so they just kind of go away.
Okay. I've tried that sometimes, and then they say yes. Like then you find yourself with a puzzle. You're like, okay.
That is true. That is risky.
Yeah.
That's risky. I'm not saying everyone should do that, but I feel like the the game of pricing, wouldn't want to call it a game, but the puzzle of pricing sets a lot of psychological expectations around, your perceived value and how people, you set expectations with price on a lot of things.
Yeah.
So if you were to say, how much do you charge for an hourly coaching? And I'd say $75, immediately you think you're a rookie coach.
Right.
You could, maybe, I don't know, depending on who the audience is. If it's an individual that doesn't have a lot of money and they're in a startup, that's a heck of a deal. Mm-hmm. But if it's someone who's been 20 years in business and they've seen someone else charges $300 or $500 or $1,000 an hour, they might not see you're the right person for them. So sometimes pricing can also help others understand and help you understand who could be a fit or who isn't a fit. So I think price has something to do with it.
Well, let's close there as well and see if between us we can have some back and forth. Like, you have an idea, I have an idea, you have an idea, I have an idea of like what are real meaningful steps people could take if they want to put their prices up. If they want their next year's prices to be better than their this year prices, what can they be doing today to be able to do it? You give us a first idea, I give us a second idea. Let's see how many we can get
I'll give you an
together.
idea to what's real in my world.
Okay.
Accounting professionals typically have anywhere between 100 to 200 clients,
Yep.
and they want to raise their prices. They haven't done it in the last 3 years.
Right.
So the first thing that I tell them is, why don't you do a small batch first? Don't send a letter to every single customer saying you're raising your prices blanket 20%. Why don't you call your 5 clients that are most likely to say yes to, find what's the appropriate level of price that you're going to raise and explain to them why, without necessarily justifying it, just explaining that business reasons that are good for the client, which is to improve your customer experience. We've got upgraded technology that's going to help us be able to do your work faster, et cetera, et cetera. So that was my first idea.
So your first is to do a small batch, right? Okay, so what might I do if I was looking to increase pricing is I might introduce a premium offering. So I might look at what the core offering is right now. I might say, well, actually, if I had a VIP offering that was above this that I could utilize, then what would that look like? And you generally tend to find about 20% of your customer base will be happy to pay more if they're given the choice. So I'd introduce a premium offering that can later be a price anchor for something else.
That's great.
What do you got?
If more than 3 people have said yes to a typical price when you're trying to bring on a client, then raise your price.
Okay.
If you're getting no objections, then that's a signal for you that you should be able to raise your price. You are either average or less than average, and that.
So just signal the fact that if you're not getting price resistance, it's time for you to be able to put the price up. What else could we do if we want to put our prices up? And I want to grow my price for next year. Is I may look to de-spec my core offering. So manage expectations around my existing core offering and start to remove levels of service for what we're currently charged to create space for a future price uplift. So if you do all of this right now for this price, is I might start taking things out of the bundle. And in professional services, that could look like if somebody gets a one-on-one annual review with the practice owner, it's, well, no, that doesn't happen now, is you get PDF report with your action steps, and we are taking that. And what we're doing is we're starting to move to a tiered level of service that means that I can completely throw the menu around. Is that what we're not doing is changing our pricing. We're changing our offers across the board, changing the entire menu.
I think if you're going to be rebranding to solving a very specific problem for a very broad group, or you're going to be solving a very narrow problem for a very, narrow group, or whichever way of those two, how you want to play with that. You can also play with how you charge that price, because there's less of you who are qualified to be able to solve a very narrow, specific problem. So if you brand yourself as someone, and I'll give you a quick example, like my brother had to replace his sliding door, and rather than calling a handyman, he called a sliding door guy. Sliding door guy came to the house, and he came out with his little sliding door toolbox, and he had different wheels and different sizes and different tools. And the guy charged him $250 to do that. And Hector was like amazed by this, and it took him 10 minutes to do. And he asked him, hey, can you also patch up that wall over there? He's like, no, I only do sliding doors.
I'm the sliding door guy.
And look at my calendar. I'm filled up with all of these appointments. But he's really good at solving that very, very narrow problem. And he's very profitable at doing that. So
actually be prepared to keep sharpening your focus from a specialism, and as a result of which, letting other people go that were looking for your generalist approach.
Yes.
these are good ideas. These are good ideas. Like, what else can we be doing that if we want to get paid more money next year? Is this one's really easy. Just put your prices up and do not feel any need to be able to justify it. I feel sometimes when people go through a price change, it's like, how am I going to communicate this? What am I going to do to be able to give reason to it? I see examples all the time where people are like, well, like it's because of inflation and our suppliers have given us increased expenses, so we have to pass that on to you. We're really, really sorry. We haven't made a price raise in for 3 years, and please don't hate me for it. Whereas you could just say, here's this year's price list.
Mm-hmm. Well, just like Netflix will send you an email saying, by the way, next year this will be the price, and you're like, okay.
Like it or dislike it, it is
right.
what it is. Move on. Like, you think about it less. Is one of the easiest ways to get paid more money is just put your prices up and make no excuses.
Yep. Here's one idea. If you're looking to get more time back, for those who have a model of offering free consultations and free discovery calls, is put a price to those.
Love that.
And being able to have a paid diagnostic, but here's the twist to it. The paid diagnostic means that whatever quote I give you based on what your big problem is, that diagnostic fee will be absorbed by the entire project. So it makes the person feel like they got skin in the game, but you're also giving them flexibility to know, hey, look, we're not just charging just this aside.
And you're putting a value on your free time. So as a result of which you're seeing more qualified prospects and you're getting paid for your prospecting, really, right? Okay. What else might I do if I'm looking to put my fees up? Is I might add a business to my existing business, and by which I mean a brand or an alternative offering as well, that unlike just a premium level of service, is a sister company or a sister level of service alongside it that says that what we are now is associated with blank, and add some mutual benefits between both associations, and that gives a reason for us to be able to get more money out of the same customer. Is try to create collaborative businesses. And sometimes that's a vertical integration, sometimes that's a horizontal integration. But by integrating with like-minded businesses, then chances are we can make more happen. Any other ideas that we've got to be able to get paid more in 2020, whatever?
When it comes to professional expertise or a particular service, people are expecting a specific outcome. And a lot of people fear, what if you don't give me the outcome? There's risk. Yep. So you could raise price based on how much risk the person wants to take.
Okay.
So an example of that could be is if you want me to take more risk, I could price prime that because I'm willing to take more risk. Meaning that if you want 100% guarantee, meaning if I don't deliver on what you're expecting on a specific deliverable, then I'll give you 100% satisfaction guarantee. It doesn't have to be a return, but that requires a lot more resources from the vendor or the service provider. You could price prime that. So you can design an offer where if you provide a guarantee to someone, you can actually prime your price because it gives them more sense of assurance that there's a high probability that it's going to get done.
Okay. Here's another thing that you could do to be able to grow your value, your pricing, etc., is to add an air of exclusivity. So give yourself a capacity, give yourself a wait list, give yourself some degree of scarcity that says there are only so many of you that can get access to this level of service, this level of price point. We are capping ourselves at blank. Some degree of exclusivity starts to mean that the price points can rise.
I'm borrowing an idea from you and from the group that was shared earlier, is that if you are about to raise your prices and you want to lock in, you want to help people make a decision on wanting to do business with you, this will help you convert business, not necessarily charge at a higher fee, but be able to say, hey, I'm about to raise my prices, but I'm calling my clients to see if they want to lock in on doing business now. And I thought that idea is brilliant. So I want to give you credit for that too.
You're good. It's just, price prime next year's prices today by giving people the ability to move quick.
Yep.
Because already you've set expectation for where we're going into the future as well. These are some good ideas on growing pricing. Like, this alone was worth listening to the conversation to say, how do I get paid more for doing the same? There's some real good ideas there. And, Carlos, if you were to leave people with a parting thought of how to make their next year better than this year, how to be able to step into their next 12 months to go live their greatest life next, what would you be sharing with people as words of encouragement, words of wisdom to be able to help them make the most of the months that are ahead of them?
It takes courage to make hard decisions. I think write down what it is that you want. Really be intentional about taking action to get what you want. Again, I would just say work on being able to move yourself towards achieving what you want at no cost. There are some costs, but at some point, be able to endure the difficulty, because coming out of the other side, getting what you want. And a lot of professional service providers tend to have a little bit of that people pleaser, and we all do in our world, and set the boundaries, have the courage to have difficult conversations where you are respecting your time and what you want and be in alignment with your mission. And I think the more that people can achieve that, they're going to be able to get what they want to be able to achieve.
I love that. Carlos Garcia, you're a class act, my friend. I'm excited
man.
to see what you continue to do with your career. And I hope that people listening to today's conversation start to realize just how much more they can do if they take on board much of the principles that you've shared.
It's been a privilege being here. I appreciate it. Thank you.